So welcome. We figured we'd start out the year with a refresher on eligibility. And so if you joined us, I think we did this about 2 months ago. We had some good feedback from that, and we thought we'd go ahead and do it again. And one of our concerns was our answers were all over the place. So we felt like maybe this should be something we do periodically. And we do like to see everyone's answers. So when you give the answer, it's not going to put your name. Unless you put it in the chat box. And if you have a comment or question, we do pay attention to those and try to make sure that everyone can see those. So I'm going to go ahead and end this first poll that we have and get started. So the format here, if you raise your hand, we really won't answer you unless you put it in the chat box. I have myself, and I also have my colleague Melissa who's here with me. And so Melissa will pay attention to the chat box too. And I may need to move her over though, so she can talk if she needs to. So Melissa, I've added you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. If you're new to us and you're not sure what IDRC is, we're a consortium. We're one of the 4 consortiums that are designed to help the migrant programs. And we have 26 member states, but we also provide training to all states. And so we're just welcome you here. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to start this out by just reminding you of where you should go for eligibility. So first of all, every state, you all have access to the guidance and regulations, but some of your states may have interpreted some things differently. You may have a policy on something that is state specific. So I always want to say, don't go back to your boss and say, Jessica says this. We record this and you can always share it, but know that what they ask you to do, that you do need to follow your state policy. And we're going to try to stick in general eligibility areas, but we do know that states, try to stick to the guidance, and sometimes there's a little bit of variance in how they interpret things. So I just want to put that out there before this. Okay, so 3 main things to focus when you're thinking about eligibility. I always like to start this. I know if you listened a couple months ago, I started it similar, just because there are the rules and there are the application of the rules when someone is standing in front of you. So we have kind of designed this towards recruiters or anyone that's going to make an eligibility decision about a family. So when I have a family in front of me, I want to determine, is there a migratory agricultural worker? Are there children eligible for the program? And then once I figure those 2 things out, what's the QAD? When does this eligibility start? So when you're thinking about the migratory agricultural worker, there are some things that you all should think about. So right in front of you, the family says, yeah, we did make a move and my husband came here to work in dairy. So you're thinking, okay, when was that? Did they make a qualifying move in the last 36 months? Did they engage in this work within 60 days of the move? And was the work in a temporary or seasonal agriculture or fishing work job? So there's a few more things that you have to think about. Make sure I'm pressing my slides right. One is that qualifying move needs to be due to 3 factors. It needs to be due to economic necessity. It needs to be from one residence to another residence, and then from one school district to another. So did they make that kind of move in the last 36 months? Did they engage in the work? Did they actually start? They actually need to start the work, not just apply. And then, computer's being finicky. The job that they had needs to be a seasonal job. So it's, depend on the season, it's not year round, or a temporary job that is also lasts less than 12 months. So those are the main things I'm thinking about for that migratory agricultural worker. So if that is the case, if they tell me they didn't engage in that new qualifying work within 60 days of the move, then you can take a look at their past history and see if they had 2 other moves in the last 36 months that could help them out there. But if I can determine that, yes, they did make a qualifying move and they did get the job right after, the qualifying job after, then I can know that I have a migratory agriculture worker in front of me. And so some states like to say they put the hat on and they know there's a migratory agriculture worker right there. And an example would be, if they moved January 9th, 2023, they made a move, got a job in agriculture, they would be considered a migratory agriculture worker until January 9th, 2026. So this is really important for you to think about. And so let me continue on here. Once I have that, I've determined that there's a migratory agriculture worker. I'm going to see if there's any kids that have not yet graduated. If those children have moved with the migratory agriculture worker, or they themselves are the worker, or they're like it says here, have they moved as a migratory agriculture worker or with or to join or proceed within 12 months, or a parent, a spouse who is a migratory agricultural worker. And then we're going to have that same kind of qualifying move, has to be due to economic necessity from one district to another across school district lines. So I'm always going to look back at their whole 36 months. So I know those of you that are veterans know this, but I'm just saying it for the sake of those that are brand new. So when you're looking at a child, you're looking at when the worker was established as a migratory agricultural worker, and you're trying to figure out that date. And then look at the last time the child moved with that migratory agricultural worker, and that can help you determine that QAD. And so one thing to think about that people still get confused on is, remember, they have to move with a migratory agricultural worker across school district lines for an agriculture job or a non-agriculture job within 36 months of when the migratory agricultural worker is established. So some of you are still getting hung up on, well, that was a move to work in a restaurant. That's okay, as long as they are moving with an established migratory agricultural worker that still has time within that 36 months and it meets those other criteria. So those, we still on our national assessment have lots and lots of questions of what residency dates is. And my colleague Melissa always says, sit and think about the last time the family moved to their current school district. So you have a family in front of you. When did you guys get here? When did you come move into the school district? Oh, it was last week. Then that's going to be their residency date. So remember, the residency date and the qualifying arrival date are not the same thing, but the residency date is when they became a resident in their current school district. So you want to make sure that you have that correct. So as a reminder, we do have let me drop this in the chat box just so you have it. We have a flow chart that kind of shows how complicated your job can be at times. So let me go ahead and make sure I'm on the right slide so that you can see that. Here we go. We have a flow chart that helps you know specifically, what all of the different criteria. And so I just want to reference that. You can go back and then we're going to right now kind of jump into the actual scenarios and things to think about. So let me make sure there was no questions or comments up to now. I don't think so. Okay, so last time that we did this, we didn't really talk about temporary work. So I just want to put a few things out there. Some of you are very seasonal states. Some of you are extremely temporary, and this is what you work with all the time with meat processing. We know that temporary employment means employment that lasts for a limited period of time, usually a few months, but no longer than 12 months. And so you want to make sure that that when you're looking at someone that could be in possible temporary work, that the work that they have does not last longer than 12 months. How may an SEA determine that a worker's job is temporary employment? You can have the employer statement. They say they're not going to stay there longer, or that maybe they were only hired for a specific amount of time for 3 months, or they're a temporary worker on probation, and then they don't know if they're going to have more work later. You can have the employer tell you themselves that they don't plan on having them very long. You can have the worker statement, or you can have the state determination that the state has determined some other reasonable way basis that the employment will not last longer than 12 months. So just keep this in mind when we look at a scenario. So your thoughts, I'm going to put a poll up here so that you can go ahead and let me know your thoughts on this. I'm going to launch it. So on each one of these questions, we're going to give you a chance to give you your answers. So if an employer says that the work is year-round, but he always lays workers off for 2 to 3 weeks around the holidays for unpaid vacation, or maybe several weeks in the summer when there is less work, would this be considered temporary work? So the employer says, no, well, really, these guys are hired year-round, but they have that 3 weeks that they never get paid near the holidays, or they have several weeks in the summer that they don't get paid just because they don't need them as much during that time. So I just want to get your thoughts on whether you think that would be temporary work or that wouldn't be temporary work. So we're going to give you about 30 seconds that you can put your thoughts in, and then I'll share with everyone what the poll says. Yes or no? Would this be temporary or would this not? And if you I may ask you to justify why you put an answer, because sometimes knowing what people's thoughts are helps you understand where they're coming from on the determination. So we'll wait about 10 seconds. All right, so we have right now a split of 41% of you say no, this would not be temporary. And 50% of you, it keeps changing a little bit, say yes, and about 10% of you say no. So if you said no, explain why you would say no. Just real quick in the chat box. When someone lays you off, you're essentially fired. Okay, so Wilson, did you say yes or no to your answer? So give me your explanation. So Wilson says yes. Raquel says intent. Raquel, can you give me a little bit more? Yeah, the worker's intent is absolutely essential. It would be helpful. But let's say the worker says, I really don't know. I'm just going to work as long as they have, they let me stay here, but I don't know that I don't think it'll be a year because I know that they always lay us off. So because the worker is not moving, let's see what everyone says. So Christina says the work stated year round. Sharita says yes, because there's a break in the work within 12 months. No, because the job is waiting for you. No, because the laid off for unpaid vacation, that was confusing. We do know of several places, lots of dairies, for example, in several places will say, okay, over the holidays, we're going to give you guys some time off, but we're going to maybe stagger it. So this employee will go and this employee, but it's completely unpaid. This is not like they're still employees. No, because it says the workers around. You have two scenarios going on. Vacation is different than job loss. Okay, so this was a question that we've had several states ask us, and I wanted to put it out there. And so we always say that if they're laid off for any reason and they're not being paid, that they just don't have work. If the work was still available, for example, for them, like it's their choice to take it off, then that would be one thing. And then they're just coming back to their job. But if the place just says literally, we don't have work for you for the next three weeks, then you have two different scenarios. So we've got different ways that you can see. One says I changed yes to no because they close for several weeks in the summer. No, because the job is stable and year round. We can just say that any job is less than 12 months. Wendy says if the worker engages in migratory work elsewhere during the break, he could possibly qualify. So I just put this out here because this is an example of how interpretation can look different per state. And so this would be something that as a state, you could say, all right, if I know that the worker does not have work for that 3 weeks, and even if he begged to stay, there's no work for him, then that is basically being laid off for 3 weeks. If the worker says, the owner says, well, yeah, you can go ahead and work, you don't have to take it, then of course that would be considered a stable job. So in many of the things that we're doing in Migrant Ed, there's extra details, there's more things that you want to know. And then there's also subject to how people interpret that. So we would say if there was no employment available for that 3 weeks, that is not a year-round job because it would be the whole, that's part of, for 3 weeks of the entire year, this person has no work. Question, just curious if other states do the annual state determination. Let's see, Idaho doesn't do it because we don't have big agribusiness. I do know that Vermont still does some state determination, so they might be a good state to reach out to. Question says, if my family is very dependent on that salary each week and I go a whole month without it, I need to do something to make that up. And like someone said, I might even find it necessary to move my family elsewhere. Okay, very good comments. So comment is if your work is not available for some time, but you plan to return to that employer to work, that would be no. However, if the worker plans to work elsewhere and then return to work for that first employer, then yes. So lots of these comments are interpretations that the states have. And so you just need to go back and make sure that you know what your state, how they would handle that, and then what that looks like. Because many of these comments are not specifically in the guidance. This is just how states have decided to interpret. Now, I will not try to muddy the waters on lots of things. I just wanted to put that out there because a lot of times at IDRC, we get questions where they'll say, well, is it black or white? And a lot of times it just depends on, sometimes it can depend on the state and depend on the direction that we're going. Okay, so let's try to find, let me end that one. So we ended it with 41% saying no, 48% saying yes, and 10% saying I do not know. So we'll end that one. All right. So let's look at another one. All right, here's the first scenario. So, and Miriam says, do we need a new COE? Let's put that out to the group. Would you need a new COE when they came back? We'll probably find that it's very split on how people answer. But let's go ahead and go on to this scenario. You can answer Miriam in the chat box, and we'll provide an answer here in just a second. So what I'm going to do with this is read through it, and then I'll be quiet for a little bit. And you guys, I will put a poll up. I'll go ahead and put that up for scenario 1. Okay, so Isbelia Reyes, this was a question we got from a state. The places have been changed, so it wasn't a New Mexico question, but we tried to find a relevant place that had similar. Isbelia Reyes, age 32, moves alone from Dexter, New Mexico to Roswell, New Mexico on 2/10/21. She works at a dairy farm as a milker for 7 months. She then moves to Clovis, New Mexico, which is a whole different school district, another part of the state, not that far from there, but on 9/21/21 to work at a different dairy. She continues there until 9/10/22, so almost a year, when she leaves the farm and travels back to Guatemala to bring her 8-year-old son. She comes back to the dairy in Clovis with her son, whose name is Ciro, and on 11/25/22 and begins work again. You are the recruiter and find her on 1/1/23, so January 1st, still employed at the dairy. Is her son eligible? Why or why not? If so, what is the QAD and the res date? So I think I have the poll up. So I want you I'm going to give you about a minute or two, promise to be quiet. Put your answers in the poll and we'll share out the answers with everyone. So we want to know, is her son eligible? And then what is the QAD and what is the res date? And so I will be quiet and give you about a minute to do that. Conda, your comment of it depends, but with what you have, see if you make a determination, yay or nay with this. Okay, so please put your answer in the poll. So you don't have to put it in the chat box, put it in the poll. That way we have it. I'll give you about 15 more seconds. Okay, so this is what we have so far. Right now we have 97% of you say that her son is eligible. 3% of you say no. The QAD, we have 4% of you saying 2/10/21. We've got 11/25/22 for 84% of you, and 8% of you say 1/1/23. Someone says no because he's almost 12, which I don't know how that would, 12 would not be a problem. What's the res date? We have overwhelmingly 11/25/22 is 72%, but then we have a whole bunch of them that are like on the February date, we have 4%, 9/21 we have 3%, 9/10 we have 5%, 1/1/23 we have 13%. We have 3 of you that say they are not eligible. So let's look at this particular situation. The large majority of you say yes, he is eligible. So let's walk through this. And I'm going to go back to that original thought pattern that we had when we were looking at the migratory agricultural worker. So did the mom make a qualifying move in the last 36 months? And you can use the chat box now if you want to add any comments or anything on it. Did she make a qualifying move? We've got a yes. Did she engage in new qualifying work within 60 days of the move? Yes. Was the work So now answer this one. Was the work temporary or seasonal, agriculture or fishing? So she did work at the dairy less than a year that first time, and also the other time. So there was a comment that said, I would ask to see if the current question to confirm that the current work is temporary. So let me put this out there. If the current work is not temporary, would she still be eligible or not? I'll just throw that. I've got a few, got a no, got a yes, need a statement. Okay, so let's keep working through this. Yes, she has actually 2 previous moves that she got work in a dairy and didn't stay there longer than 12 months. So she could be considered established as a migratory agricultural worker. She's got those 2 dates. She didn't stay at either one of the dairies longer than 12 months. Now, her intent is also very important, but when we're just trying to establish a migratory agricultural worker, yes, there is a migratory agricultural worker. So she could be considered a migratory agricultural worker depending on the date that you're looking at, all the way until September 9th, 2024. Now, she went and got her kiddo. And it says, are they under the age of 22, not yet graduated? Yes, he's only 8. Have they moved? Yes, he came with her. Was the move due to economic necessity as they're coming back to go to work? Mom and son moved across school district lines due to economic necessity. So we have the date the migratory agriculture worker was established. We have the last time they moved alone, moved with the migratory agriculture worker, and then you can look at that date. So on this, now remember, if let's say, that they have to move with the migratory agriculture worker, they could also do subsequent moves that could be for non-ag jobs. So it could be also a non-qualifying that you could possibly, come up with this. But yes, this family could definitely qualify. And those of you in the overwhelming majority that said November would be the QID, you were correct. See if we have any other comments on that. Okay. All right, so let's do scenario 2. This is another one. Let me go ahead and pop up the poll here. So this is scenario 2. We'll launch that. Okay. So scenario 2 says Jose Gonzalez moved to your state to work at a cheese factory 3 months ago. So let's say it's November 12th, 2022 from Georgia. He works adding rennet to milk and then helping pack blocks of cheese that are ready to be packed. He is planning on staying at the factory a few months until he finds another job. He is only 18 and has not yet graduated. Is he eligible? Why or why not? And what is his QAD if he is eligible? I'll give you a minute. Okay, we'll give you a minute more. I'm just watching how many people have participated in the poll. Once we see the numbers get a little bit higher, we'll start talking. Okay, so we are again split right down. We have 40% of you saying yes, 54% saying no, 6% saying I don't know. We asked what is QAD. 43% of you say 11, 12, 22, and 57% of you say he is not eligible. Lots of comments in the here in the chat that are kind of answering this question, and so we'll show you what the words are from OME related to this, and that should help. And then I noticed there were some other questions from the last scenario that we can kind of go back and check those too. Okay, so I'll go ahead and end that poll. All right, so this is what is initial processing. So several of you alluded to this to say, hey, this is not the original product. They've added something in. So what does initial processing mean? The department considers initial processing to be work that is beyond the production stage of agriculture work and precedes the transformation of a raw product into something more refined. We said that he was adding the rennet to milk. Several of you said like it makes the milk curdle or it makes it, it changes that. So the question is, would his job processing that, adding that rennet and packaging that cheese, would that qualify? And so lots of comments, but again, we were pretty split on this. And then there was, would you consider the same idea in forestry when a chemical is added to treat wood is added to the raw thing? So let's look at the definition. That's a very good question by Elvira. So here's some examples of initial processing work in poultry and livestock. And you can apply that to think of the same kind of thinking when you think about, forestry. So they give examples of initial processing to be stunning, slaughtering, skinning, eviscerating, splitting carcasses, hanging, cutting, trimming, deboning, and enclosing the raw product in a container. So the product, the original raw product. So cheese is no longer the raw product of milk. It's changed, it's changed into cheese. For the purposes of MEP, examples of initial processing work in the crop industry are cleaning, weighing, cutting, grading, peeling, sorting, freezing, and enclosing the raw product in a container. Fishing, same kind of thing, scaling, cutting, freezing, dressing, and enclosing the raw product in the container. So they actually give an example of when initial processing ends, and they actually give the idea of starter cultures or rennet. That's a type of starter culture. It says the department considers when the initial processing ends to be no longer the stage. Let me see. The department considers a product to no longer be in the stage of initial processing once the transformation of the raw product into something more refined begins. So it was milk. Now we're adding ingredients to it. We're changing it. It's turning into something else. So they give examples of placing raw chicken breasts into the oven for cooking, adding starter cultures to milk to make cheese, applying necessary ingredients to a raw pork belly to begin the curing process. You are now changing whatever your process is. So very similar, treating wood, we would now be adding something to the wood. You're changing it. As soon as you start doing that, that's the beginning of a transformation process and therefore is not agriculture or fishing purposes for MEP. So one says he is working with the raw product. Yeah, he's working with the raw product, adding new ingredients, adding things in. That's when you do. Now, rennet, she says, Francis said, I do not see rennet in the crop activities. So rennet is not eligible. You're adding it. It's a starter culture is what rennet is. Someone says, yes, he's working with the raw product milk. I mean, literally OME in the guidance gives us a thing. When you add cultures to milk to make cheese, it's no longer considered part of initial processing. So now, so I changed my answer to no. No, he is packing. Someone else is answering on the menu. Okay. So that's, if you, like I said, if you raise your hand, just put it in the chat box and we'll check your question out there. Now we did have some questions earlier. Let's see if we can go back to any of those. There was a question on, does IDRC consider a worker's intent to stay permanently at the dairy farm to be superseded by the actual facts of having only worked for less than 12 months? So if at any point that worker was saying that they were coming in for a permanent job and that they were not planning on leaving, it would be, that would not be a qualifying thing. But if they, if you're looking in there, like maybe the case that we just gave you, she was always planning on getting her son just as soon as she got the money together. So she knew she probably wouldn't stay there over 12 months, then that would be a different situation. But if we see that the job itself is a non-qualifying job, then of course we couldn't, be in a permanent nature and they're planning on staying there forever, then we wouldn't be able to go that direction. Okay, so let me see. Bruce says cheese is often made starting from pasteurized milk anyway. More artisanal cheese can sometimes come from raw milk. Good point. So there's usually something that's happened so that milk has already been cooked and now they're going to add other things. So I pulled this one specifically because you want to make sure that you're really checking your guidance and you're reading those examples. And then I like your thoughts. Someone said, well, what about harvesting? How would you apply? So you can look at that same, thought process and say, well, what would be the equivalent of that? So Raquel says, what about uncured bacon? Any thoughts? Any thoughts on they just mentioned here, applying necessary ingredients to raw pork belly to begin the curing process. So I would say if this uncured bacon, if they're doing any sort of thing that's transforming that, maybe they're adding some salts in there or doing extra things. If it's anywhere and anything that's related to any of these things that the OME is saying when initial processing ends, if it's anything related to that, then most likely that is not going to be eligible. Now, Sandra says it's bacon, not a raw product. Okay, so yeah, depending on, they may say, well, if all you did, for example, my husband and I usually raise a pig and then we'll take it for slaughter, and they'll give us, when they cut it, they can actually process the bacon and try to put it in brine, or they can just give us the raw meat that literally is just cut into strips like bacon. So it depends. You would need to know specifically if they're transforming it into something else. Okay, good questions. Someone says the pig was already slaughtered, skin cut to get pork belly. Yeah, exactly. So if you're changing it in any way, then it would not count. Would unloading raw milk count? We haven't been able to count cheese factories or yogurt factories because they add stuff to the milk so quickly. So unloading raw milk, are you saying from like a tanker? Because a lot of times that's where it comes in, and the tanker driver is coming in, and he's picking it up and then taking it somewhere else. Any comments on that? Unloading raw milk. Says, what is the difference between that and parts of chickens and transport? Probably yes, yes. So it would just depend on, while you're still working with that raw product where it says packaging or that beginning part, then it's okay. But anything past that. And it said, versus I would do unloading of raw milk at the factory, but not the transporting. Elizabeth said transport off the field do not qualify. So the transporting itself off the field. So you can see how people might handle that there. Okay, let's move on to another one. Okay, so looking at this particular case, Michelle says, sorry, but just want to double check. Then this person does not qualify because they're, okay, that's exactly where we are right now. Yes, he did move. Oh, wait, sorry. But no, he's working at a cheese factory. He's, past that initial processing. So, he would not be eligible. You are correct. Okay, so we got another, let's see if we have any more questions that we're trying to see. Okay. So here is a new scenario. I'm going to go ahead and put the poll up for this one. And feel free to give us, this is scenario 3. Watch that. Okay. So Carolina Ferreira and her daughter Cecilia Chavez, date of birth, you can see she's born in 2008, moved to Immokalee, Florida from Charleston, South Carolina on March 3rd, 2021. Some of you are already putting the answer. I don't know how you have it already. Carolina found a job sorting vegetables on November 20th, 21. They moved back to Immokalee, Florida, and Carolina found a job hosting tables at a restaurant. Yes or no? Are they eligible or not? I'll give you about a minute. And put your answer in the chat. Don't give everybody the answer yet. I'm not in the chat, in the poll. Okay, so we are again split on this. I've had, so we had about 150 of you guys have responded. 54% of you say yes. And 46% of you say no. So those of you that say yes, why are they eligible? What do you think? What are you thinking? Okay, I've got some no's coming in. I wonder if you just looked at it real fast and were like, okay, sorting vegetables. So if you said no, please tell me how on earth they qualify. Just so that I know your thoughts. Because we have the largest number of people right now just said yes, that this family does qualify. Okay, they're sorting vegetables. True, that would be a qualifying job. But how long did it take for her to get the job? They came in March and then they left. I mean, they got the job in November. So if you looked at it really fast, yes, we probably got you there. No, they are not It says, Tanda says they might be eligible if the parent had 2 qualifying jobs prior to moving to Immokalee. Very good. Read too fast, didn't notice the lag between the arrival. Looked at it too quickly. So yeah, that's good. Okay, read it too fast. So don't answer super fast, but that can happen too. We see, yeah, sorting vegetables, or someone at the school maybe says, hey, I know this family, they were sorting vegetables, and you're like, yes, they qualify. But then you see that there can be another factor that's over 60 days. So eligible or not, no, unless they had some other factors around there. So yes, they made a move, but it took longer than 60 days. So we are not eligible. Okay, we're going to shake things up a little bit and do true or false. So these are questions. So some of you that if you pay attention to the results page and the information that OME sends out, these are some that are on there that may or may not be common knowledge for everyone, or you may have the same question. And so I'm going to go ahead and throw the poll up there and let me know what you end this poll and start a new one. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on this particular one. So if a migratory agriculture worker has a contract with a company to work in qualifying work, does that count as being engaged? So they actually have a contract. So don't put your answer in the chat, put your answer in the poll. True or false? Yes, it counts as being engaged or not. Okay, the majority of you guys have answered, so we'll go ahead and share the poll results. One of these times we're going to get about the same answer, but right now we are still very split. So 11% of you say, I do not know. 36% of you say, yes, this would be considered engaged into, specifically engaged in agriculture work, and 52% of you say, no, this does not count. There was a comment that said, I said no because he's not engaged in the actual work. Let's see what else it says on here. If someone promised you to get married, but you don't have a ring yet, are you not engaged? Okay, let's see. Elizabeth says, yes, if they start within the 60 days. I have cannery workers who have to show up for orientation prior to the start date. They store tomatoes. So I'm just going to give you OME's answer for that. So if you can find this under the policy questions that they answer, it says, no, the Office of Migrant Education believes a signed contract for qualifying work does not automatically indicate that a worker is engaged in qualifying work. The worker is engaged when he or she has started performing the qualifying work. So just think about that, that application there. And so Francis says, I was thinking about H2As who need a contract to work with a farmer. Same thing, they could have a contract, but not yet be here, or not come, or not yet started. They want them to actually start the work. But yeah, that's it says one caveat is if they start orientation, they are engaged. Perfect. So that orientation does count. So they actually showed up. That's part of their actual training. But just having something in paperwork and not actually receiving any of the training yet would not considered engaged. We have a comment, we consider attending a safety orientation as having started the work. So if they're actually attending something that's required for their job, not just the contract. Good, thank you for the comments too, those of you that added those in. Okay, so let me ask you on this one. This is true or false one. I'll throw the poll up there. Okay, so if a worker who recently moved to the area was hired seasonally to be a mechanic at a local farm and also helps pick up pumpkins from the field at the same farm during the season, would they be eligible for MEP if his family met all of the other eligibility criteria? So he came to be a mechanic, but he also helps at the same place that they're growing pumpkins. He helps clear the fields during that season. True or false? Would this worker possibly eligible, or kids be eligible if they met the criteria? Let me know what you think. Give you about 30 seconds. So there's a question, is there a pumpkin season within 60 days after the start? So let's, yeah. Well, that's a good thing to throw out there. What is everyone thinking? So this one, we're closer. We have 87% of you saying, yes, this could be considered, and 13% of you say no. So we've got comments that say, but he was hired to be a mechanic. Maybe if he picked up the pumpkins first. And then Bruce says at least one activity soon after the move has to be called qualifying work. So, and then comment, he is touching the product and hired for the farm. So let's see what it says. So we have here, if a worker, this is on the guidance under F27, may a worker who performs both qualifying and non-qualifying work still be eligible for MEP? Yes, a worker is only required to meet the definition of migratory agricultural worker or migratory fisher, provided that the move was a qualifying move. So you guys' comment to say, yeah, did he also pick up the pumpkins? Was that part of it? Like, yeah, I came here and then I also helped with the crops at the same time. The fact that the worker performs non-qualifying work in addition to qualifying work has no bearing on his or her eligibility, as long as you have that qualifying work to be able to show, yes, he did pick up pumpkins. Soon after the move, this is how he was helping. So yes, you got it. Very good. So the migrant worker can do multiple jobs and it needs to be seasonal. They could do a series, it could be a temporary job too, but it still would need to be under 12 months. So good, we're getting closer on that one. We were way closer on all of us saying similar things. So let me end that one and go ahead with another one. Okay, so going back to what we learned recently on the other question, let's look at this one. I'll go ahead and put the poll up. You can get your thoughts. Is turning chicken fat into oil considered qualifying agricultural work for the purpose of the migrant education program? The worker puts the chicken fat into a machine that melts it, turning it into oil. He then sends the oil to be shipped elsewhere. The worker does not work directly with the chickens or extract the fat. His work begins with placing the fat into the machine. So, eligible activity, yes or no? What do you think? Okay, we're split again, but not straight down the middle. We have 80% of you say no, this is not considered a qualifying agricultural worker. I mean, not worker, but agricultural work. And 20% of you say yes. So it says, now I'm only going to give you, I put this specific one because OME had answered this. And you have questions of where do they use chicken fat? Maybe in dog food, I don't really know. It says, based on the information provided, the Office of Migrant Education would not consider this work to be agricultural work or employment for the purpose of MEP because it's beyond the initial processing stage. That is, the raw agriculture product is beginning the process of transformation into something more refined. So Bruce says, I kind of relate it to packaging steaks. The initial processing was to get a cut piece of meat, but in this case, processing was done to get fat, so it's no longer initial processing. So you can see it's already there. So I just want to remind you to check out those questions, and then that you can ask questions to OME if you want about specific. They'll usually ask that it's your state director, but you can ask specific questions there. Okay, so Rosemary says, well, what happens if he cuts the chicken fat, but once it gets the machine, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, he has to remove the fat. Yeah, so if they were still working with that original product that they're cutting, I mean, chickens, I've processed chickens and sometimes there's not that much fat on them. So Maria says, is it kind of the same thing as about the one with the milk? The milk was raw, but they're adding something to it. So they're now turning the fat into something else. So I believe if you were cutting it off the original chicken, then that would be different. I can't even believe, when you really think about these conversations we're having right now, it shows the detail that the recruiters need to be aware of, and also the complexity of the job that you can have. Okay, so let's do one more on that. Let's go ahead and put this poll up here. Let me end this one and add this one on here. I appreciate all of your participation in this. It's a lot more fun to see what everybody thinks on this. So, are the following activities considered qualifying work for the purposes of the Migrant Ed program? hunting wild animals for personal subsistence, and gathering wild plants, such as roots and tubers for personal subsistence. So which would you think would be eligible or not? What do you think? Both? I'll be quiet for a little bit. And there is only one correct answer, so you'll have to figure out what that is. So a tuber could be like bulbs, roots, things that grow under the ground for plants. And I can tell you out west, they do see this in some states. So this is actually a question that the roots and tubers are something that I've sat and listened to recruiters talk about working with that. Okay, so we did have a comment in the chat box that said some states may not recognize personal subsistence. So every state's different, and some personal subsistence can be actual, ways of life that people are really living in some states, and other ones you've never seen it, and you're saying, hey, this is not happening. So right now on the poll, the polls, we're all over the place on this one too. We have 30% say hunting is eligible and gathering roots and tubers is also. We have 34% say hunting is not eligible, but gathering roots and tubers is. 2% say roots and tubers are not eligible. 14% say yes, they are eligible. 10% say hunting wild animals is not eligible. And 2% say hunting wild animals is eligible. So it's a, what if I shoot roots and tubers? I don't know, that might, wild animals are not considered livestock. Let's read what OME says about this. Now, I do realize that for some of you, you're saying, I'm never going to come across this, but some of this, gathering roots and tubers and sometimes like mushrooms and things like that in woods and national different places are how some people will make money during different seasons. So let's look at what they said. Qualifying work means temporary employment or seasonal employment. Okay, so I'm going to skip this first. Oh, I'll just read it. That way it's not confusing. They believe that production or initial processing of a raw agriculture product, such as crops, poultry, livestock, dairy work, as well as the cultivation or harvesting of trees, that is performed for personal subsistence. The department does not consider the term livestock to include animals hunted or captured in the wild. Therefore, we would not consider hunting wild animals to be qualifying work because they're not considering them livestock. The department considers a crop to be a plant that is harvested for use by people or by livestock. And the production of crops involves work such as gathering. Therefore, the gathering of wild plants such as roots and tubers for personal subsistence may be considered qualifying work. So a couple more comments. Let's see. In California, 50% of the family subsistence must come from this activity in order for it to be able to be considered personal subsistence. So there's an example of a state application of how they're able to look at that. Raquel says, is deer processing qualifying work? So you can look at the processing of meats and kind of look under processing and kind of see, like it says here, raw projects, to see such as livestock. Now, if they're not considering it livestock, then that may not. It says fishing. Let's see what else. Fishing is hunting wild animals. So, okay, so the gathering of ginseng, the root could be considered qualifying work. So, like I said, depends on how you determine personal subsistence in your state, but there is a chance that that could definitely qualify, depending on, if that's something that you're seeing in your state and you're seeing that it meets whatever your requirements that you're setting for personal subsistence. Okay. Bruce says here, everything is up to the state, but you have to be able to justify it per the definitions of the law. That is exactly right. So it says OME mentions substantial amount of calories. I don't know. I don't know where that one is. Because of the personal subsistence. Yes. So fishing and farming fish are different. Bruce says best to stick to the NRG. So my point is not to make people say, wow, we're talking about really random things. You can go and check out all that OME has provided on the results website of questions that they've answered. You've got your guidance, but then you have, like Bruce says, you can also, the states take a look at what is happening in your state. If Texas says we don't recognize personal subsistence because we're not seeing it, where California says we are recognizing personal subsistence, but they have to have 50%. It is very important that your state knows how you are using the regulations and using the guidance. And if you have something that you are justifying or showing that this is really happening in your state, some of you have never heard of tubers, some of you have seen this on a daily basis. So you can see the complexity, but that's why it's state run. That's why you guys make your determinations, based on following the NRGs as close as you can. And you can be able to see that. And so something to kind of think about. We are mentioning it because we want to make sure that people are aware of it and they know that it's out there. Okay, so let me give you, I think we're getting close to the end of our time. This may be our last one for today, unless we have a little bit more time. Let me go ahead and put the poll up. This is scenario 4. But I have scenario 4. Yeah. Okay. So let me launch this. So don't answer too quickly, but do put your answer in the chat. I mean, not in the chat box, in the poll. It says Lola Martinez moved alone from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico to San Antonio, Texas on 11/1/21. She soon found a job caring for pigs at a farm. Her husband, Mario Martinez, and Joanna Martinez, 6 years old, joined her the following year on 2/10/22. She worked at the farm for 6 months. On 5/5/22, the family moved to Orlando, Florida, where she got a job caring for pigs again at another farm. She has a contract for 3 years at the farm. They moved again to another home in Orlando on 9/11/22. Is Joanna eligible for MEP? Why or why not? And what is the date if she is eligible? So let's see if we can kind of come close, not be so split. Let's see what people think, particularly on this one. So yes, we're going to assume that she's under 22. Yes, and Orlando would be the same district. All right, we'll give you about 15 seconds. Okay, so this time we have 97% of you say yes, she is eligible. For her QAD, we have 37% of you saying that it's 21022, now 38. 43% of you say 5/5/22, and 8% say 9/11/22, and the 5/5 is growing a little bit. The res date, oh wait, and you have 3% that say not eligible. For the res date, we have 40% of you saying it's 5/5/22. We have 27% of you saying 9/11/22. 20% saying 2/10/22. So we're getting a little bit, this is where we still continue to see. Remember, what's the res date? The res date is the date that she moved into the school district that she currently lives in. So they're still in Orlando, Florida. It says on 5/5, the family moved to Orlando, Florida, where she got a job caring for pigs again. She has contract for 3 years at this farm. So they've been in this Orlando school district since 5/5/22. So that would be the res date. So 42% of you guys got that correct. So, they moved to a new home. That's their date. That's when they moved there, but it's still in that current school district. So it would be that 5/5 date. Okay, so let's break this one down. Did they make a qualifying move? Yeah, she actually made a couple of them. And then the worker did. So we have a migratory agriculture worker. Let's see what's with the computer. And the job was temporary. So she could be established as 5/5/22. Then we're looking at when the kids came. Yes, the child came with her due to economic necessity. The migratory agriculture worker was established on 5/5, but the last time the family moved or alone to join to be with them or with them was 5/5/22. So let's go back and look at this scenario, because I think sometimes you can't see it. It helps to see it. Sorry, press all these buttons. So let's look at this. Just breaking it down. She moved alone on 11/1. She got a job caring for pigs. Then they joined her after that. Within the time frame, it was way less than a year. They joined her. She only worked there 6 months. And the whole family picked up and moved again on 5/5/22. They're moving with the migratory agriculture worker. Even if this job itself here, like she's got a 3-year contract, is, like for non-ag work or for something else, even a non-qualifying work, they can still have a new res date there. I mean, a new qualifying arrival date there. So, so let's see. Now, if this last move, so this is where it can be considered a subsequent move. If it's not, the family could make a move for restaurant work. They could make a move for working in a hotel. Remember, after they're moving with the migratory agriculture worker within that 36 months, they've been set that they could get a new QID. So we're still having questions that says, like Wilson says, I wouldn't count the 3-year job, especially since there's another before it. That's a Q. Yeah, you could easily go on that one too. Says that is surprising to me about the MA being renewed on 5/5 due to the fact that she expects it not to be temporary. Now, it's not that it's renewed. She's still eligible. She still is a migratory agricultural worker. So it's not that, but a new qualifying arrival date for the kid can be that. All right, let's see if we got questions. Yes, new QAD on 5/5 because it's moving with that. Subsequent qualifying move due to economic necessity. Yes, exactly, Wendy, according to your comments. Okay. All right. So anyone want to answer the MA's established date? So remember, we're going all the way back to the very beginning of the slides. Let me go back to the very beginning of these, because I feel like people are still a little bit confused on this particular area. Let's see if I can. So how to determine qualifying arrival dates. You're looking at the child. Make sure I'm sharing the right thing. No, I'm not sharing the right thing. Looking at the child or youth. When did the worker themselves or the one they're traveling become established as a migratory agriculture worker? So that case that we were just looking at was easily within 36 months of the date that they moved. So you're looking at the date the migratory agriculture worker was established. You're looking at the last time the child moved with or alone to join or together with the migratory agriculture worker, as long as it's within the window of when that migratory agriculture worker was established. So you're still in that 36 months, you can get that new QAD. So if you're getting hung up saying, well, this one might be a permanent job, or this is a hotel job, or this is, remember, the qualifying arrival date is based on the date the migratory agricultural worker was established. Are they moving with them to join, or are they themselves a migratory agricultural worker? And then you can look at that new QAD. And remember, that can be a non-ag or non-qualifying agriculture job there. So keep that in mind when you're looking at these scenarios. Are you saying that he has established himself as a migratory qualifying with the move to do the 3-year contract? I'm just saying it's the 3-year contract, like you said, would not qualify because that's 3 years, and it's, I'm just saying that they still have eligibility remaining because there was a migratory agricultural worker, and so they're able to move and they were able to get that new QAD. Okay. Established date is for the migratory fisher, but the QAD is for the child. Yes. Does that make sense, Lori, or did we make it crazy for you? Is that clarifying? Okay. They have to engage with work within 60 days of their next move. Yes. So, well, yeah, they've got to get, what if the father sends his daughter with an uncle that has recently made a qualifying move to start school? What if the father sends his daughter with an uncle that has recently, so is this a migratory agricultural worker? So we can look at that. So anytime, look, you would have to apply the same kind of thing. The date the migratory agricultural worker was established, the last time the child moved with or alone, or if OSY, or to join the migratory agricultural worker, and then a new QAD. But you have to have that migratory agricultural worker. You have to have that child joining them within that, within the right time frame, and it still has to be within the 36 months that migratory agricultural worker is still considered a migratory agricultural worker. So let me check and see if I've says, is this job temporarily or seasonal? So remember, here you're looking at this ag or non-ag. So this just shows the need to continue to provide these kind of trainings. Says our state found it easier to make the distinguish between established and QAD. Okay, when the migratory agricultural worker was established and when was the QAD. Okay, so we're pretty much out of time. So let me put the last screen up. And we will continue to share these kind of things, and we hope that we're not making you crazy, because I feel like some of you still have a lot of questions. Let me make sure that I've got this. All right, so we do have an evaluation that I will, Melissa, if you can drop it into the chat box real quick. I'll go ahead and maybe I can do it real quick too. So if you have questions or comments, you can always put those in there. We will, if this is a need that people feel like that you need to have, that you would like us to continue to do these, we may need to do it a lot more often. Really, it says, Nancy Moore said, I recommend thinking of the move for work, making the worker MA and the QAD as potentially separate moves. Yes, that is exactly right. The QAD is the move for economic necessity only. Yes. And so I suggest you go back to that. When in the very beginning, I showed a link as far as the flow chart. You have to look at when the migratory agricultural worker was established. Some of you are still thinking with the old rules, and you're not looking at those subsequent moves and how the difference between a QAD and a migratory agricultural worker. So I hope this is helpful. Questions? Do you have anything you can share regarding your guidelines for exemptions on the soon after the move requirement? Right now, we wouldn't really have any time to really discuss that, but we can definitely put that, if you want to reach out to me in another thing. Let me stop recording.